This case deals with the late Vietnam War shoot-down of an Air Force F-4E Phantom II aircraft. It comprised of two men, the pilot in the front cockpit and his weapons systems officer in the back cockpit. They were hit, went in, crashed, and burned. Other eyewitnesses stated that they did not witness either an ejection or an escape. Whatever the case, these two men were never actually accounted for because their remains had never been found. The American military has an unwritten and a written code, and that solemn code is, we will leave no man or person behind.
We are tasked to support the Joint POW-MIA Accounting Command at Joint Base Pearl Harbor-Hickam, and those are the folks that go out into the field that do the recoveries where they're looking for the human remains. Now, the problem that we have with cases that we're seeing in recent years is we're finding very minimal human remains.
So when a team shows up at a lost site and it's been 40, maybe even 50 years after the fact that it happened, we are seeing a consistent pattern that anything organic, the human body, cotton, silk, is almost virtually gone. It is completely degraded and consumed by nature. What does remain are the artifacts that are man-made or synthetic.
We are tasked to know all the different uniform variations for all the military services from essentially World War I all the way through current day. So you can imagine everything from head to toe, that's a lot of equipment, and knowing when the equipment was used and when it was taken out of service.
I know what this piece is. I know what that piece is. But that doesn't prove what it is. The fact is, in which to substantially prove that this is in fact the ear cup retainer portion of a flight helmet, is to research it, understand it, and then ideally, which is why we have so many equipment examples here, is to physically match it to its respective location. And that's why it's imperative for us, not only to know historically and technically what an equipment item is, but to have a specific example of these equipment items in which to make a final physical comparison. At that point, once I've compared it to a master reference item, there's absolutely no question as to what it is and where its origin is.
I've got 43 years of collecting. Alex has got probably 30 years. But that's the beauty of it. That's the material and the knowledge that we bring to the table to answer those questions of those very unique cases. Again, can we determine that if people were present there at the site? And we've had very good success. We've worked about 200 cases, mainly involving Air Force crashes.
We're getting flashes out the target one. Watch it.
Fast forward about 20 years, in 1997, American teams find the crash site in Cambodia. They dig it. They find valuable life sciences equipment artifacts. Those artifacts which pertain to the equipment systems worn by the individual, the life sciences gear worn by both men, were then forwarded to us. And the question became, can you account for either man or both men strictly by looking at the equipment evidence? And thus far, unequivocally, the answer is yes. I have enough evidence by analyzing and identifying the artifacts in which to put both men in the aircraft at the time of impact.
And we're doing that for the families. Families are the ones that are still very interested in what happened to their loved one, even after 50, 60, 70 years.
Because the families that have loved ones that go missing in action, they have nothing. There's no gravestone, there's no funeral, there's no closure. And so any answer that we can provide as a nation and as a laboratory to the family member about what happened to my loved one, those things provide tremendous consolence and closure to each individual that is affected by this particular aspect. And for us, you can find no greater honor.